The sea that morning had the color of wet slate, bruised by a low sky and breathing a steady salt-heavy mist that clung to the bridge rails and dampened the wool of my uniform until it hung like a second skin. I remember the chill most vividly, not the biting cold of Arctic convoys. No, but the insidious, persistent damp that crept into your bones aboard HMS Blackwood, a modified Black Swan-class sloop assigned to the North Atlantic Escort Force during the bloody spring of 1943. My fingers, numb despite the woolen gloves issued by stores, hovered over the Marconi HS-46 wireless set, its dials glowing faintly green in the dim of the radio room. Outside, the distant hum of Convoy HX-237, a string of 32 merchantmen lumbering eastward from Halifax, filled the air like the drone of a sleeping beast. I was Thomas Ellis, telegraphist first class, age 23, and that day the sea would ask more of me than skill it would ask for my silence. It began as a whisper on 500 kHz, the international distress frequency, louder than the static hiss that rode the ether like a ghost. At first, I thought it mere atmospheric interference, one of those phantom echoes that haunted long watches in the mid-Atlantic Gap, where U-boats, hunted in packs and mercy, was measured in knots. But then the signal sharpened, a fragmented series of dots and dashes, unmistakably Morse, cutting through the noise with a desperate cadence. SOS, SS Claymore, position 5214 NA, train tight race, Seron Webe, doublet torpedoed. Sinking fast. My pulse quickened. The Claymore, a British freighter carrying Canadian timber and American machine tools, was part of HX-237, though listed as lagging 2 hours astern due to engine trouble. According to Admiralty Standing Order 1942, Alpha, any distress signal from a convoy vessel required immediate relay to escort commander, followed by verification through ciphered traffic on FleetNet 4. But verification took time. Time the Claymore did not have. I glanced at the chart pinned to the bulkhead, its corners curling from humidity. The position given placed the freighter well outside the escort screen beyond the protective ring of corvettes and sloops that circled HX-237 like anxious shepherds. A lone wolf, or perhaps a trap. Capite? And Lieutenant Artwig, Su-438, had been sighted 3 days prior. Shadowing the convoy's southern flank, the Admiralty had issued strict directive ADM 116/43. All unverified distress calls suspected of Heckenscheren scissors trap. Tactics must be referred to senior officer before diversion of escorts. German U-boats, we'd learned the hard way, sometimes transmitted fake SOS signals to lure escorts into ambush. Men had died chasing phantoms. My hand hovered over the key. To transmit the distress call as received would prompt Commander Vance to detach at least 2 escorts perhaps. The Blackwood herself leaving the main convoy vulnerable. To withhold it might condemn 200 souls aboard the Claymore. Sweat gathered at my temples, despite the cold. The brass clock above the receiver ticked with cruel indifference. I could hear the low thrum of the ship's diesel engines through the deck plates, feel the gentle sway as Blackwood cut through swells. Smell the sharp temps of hot valves and old varnish that never left the radio room. In that suspended moment, the weight of protocol pressed heavier than any storm. I chose obedience. I logged the signal, encrypted it per cipher key JN25B, and sent it through FleetNet for weekday prefix unconfirmed awaiting instructions. Then I waited. Minutes stretched like hours. The static returned, oppressive and final. No further transmissions from the Claymore. At 9:47, Commander Vance's terse reply crackled through the speaker. Maintain station, no action authorized. I didn't argue, didn't even breathe. I simply copied the order into the signal log, my handwriting unnaturally steady, and secured the file in the locked drawer beneath the set. Later that afternoon, a coastal command liberator spotted wreckage-splintered timber, oil slicks, a single lifeboat overturned like a dead beetle. No survivors. The Claymore had gone down in less than 20 minutes, torpedoed amidships by U, which had indeed used the freighter's real distress call as bait once it began sinking. The SOS had been genuine, but by the time confirmation reached us, It was irrelevant. The trap had sprung, not on us, but on them. Weeks passed. Convoy HX-237 reached Liverpool with minimal losses, 3 ships out of 30. A testament, the papers said, to admirable discipline and restraint by escort personnel. Then came the summons to Admiralty House in late June. I stood in a polished corridor lined with portraits of Nelson and Jellicoe, my best uniform stiff with starch, medals Primera Adenati, earned yet gleaming dully under electric shadow, a here admiro, phase like weathered tea. Eyes the color of gunmetal, shook my hand, and pinned the Distinguished Service Medal to my chest. For exemplary adherence to standing orders under duress, he said, voice low and devoid of warmth. Your silence preserved the integrity of the convoy. That is its own form of courage. I thanked him, saluted, left with the medal cold against my ribs. But as I walked back through Whitehall, past newsboys shouting headlines about Sicily and Stalin, I felt no pride, only the echo of that final, unanswered Morse call, the phantom vibration of a key I never pressed. They gave me a medal for silence, but I wanted one for speaking, for overriding the manual, for shouting into the void, for gambling 200 lives against 1,000. Heroism, I learned that day, was not always the act of doing, but sometimes the agony of not doing. And the worst kind of guilt is the kind wrapped in ribbon and displayed in a glass case. The medal never left its box. I kept it wedged beneath a loose floorboard in my lodgings near Portsmouth, wrapped in oilcloth beside a faded photograph of my younger brother killed over Hamburg in '42, his Halifax swallowed by flak before he ever saw the Ruhr. Every time I passed a newsstand or heard the Home Service announce another U-boat sunk, I felt its weight, not on my chest, but in the hollow behind my sternum, where doubt nests, like a cold-blooded thing. The Admiralty's commendation had arrived with fanfare. A paragraph in the Times, a formal mention in the London Gazette, even a quiet nod from Captain Wilkes during the Blackwood's refit. But no one asked about the silence. No one ever asks about the words "you swallow." By August, HX-237 was a footnote. Operation Husky had begun, and the war's attention turned south to sun-baked hills and olive groves. Yet the Atlantic remained a graveyard of unspoken things. I returned to duty, fingers once again dancing across the Marconi Keys, decoding signals from distant destroyers and ciphering reports on convoy sightings. Routine, they called it, but routine had changed. Now, every static burst on 500 kilohertz made my throat tighten. Every delayed acknowledgement from a merchantman sent a jolt through my spine. I began double-checking bearings, cross-referencing weather reports with signal strength, listening not just with my ears, but with my gut, a habit born not of protocol, but of penance. Then came the night of September 12th. Gale force winds lashed the Bay of Biscay, and Convoy SL 138, inbound from Freetown with manganese, ore, and West African cocoa, straggled into the danger zone off Cape Fin. I was on the midnight watch, the radio room lit only by the cathode glow of the R1155 receiver. Rain drummed the deck above like impatient fingers. At 2:17, a signal sliced through the helmnot, but a broken, urgent burst in plain language from the Dutch freighter Mostam U-boat Shadow, bearing 215, speed 8 knots, closing. No distress, just observation. Understanding orders, such traffic required encryption and relay, but something in the voice, not voice, of course, but the rhythm of the key, the slight tremor in the spacing felt wrong, too fast, too human. I knew the Mostam. She'd sailed with us on HX-221. Her wireless operator, Jan de Vries, was a meticulous man, ex-KLM radio technician, always precise, always calm. This was not his hand. My eyes flicked to the tactical chart. Mostam was alone, 10 miles off the convoy's starboard quarter, an easy target. If I followed procedure, it would take 17 minutes to encrypt, transmit, await acknowledgement, and receive orders. By then, Mostam could be aflame. Or worse, bait again. But what if this was real? What if Jan was counting on anyone to act? The silence of HX-237 roared in my ears. Not the absence of sound, but the presence of consequence. I thought of the metal under the floorboard, of the Admiral's cold eyes, of 200 men vanishing into oil-slicked water while I filed paperwork. And in that breath, I broke. I lifted the handset, bypassed the cipher machine, and keyed directly into the escort command frequency. Blackwood to escort, Commander Mostome reports U-boat contact, bearing 215, closing. Recommend immediate sweep. It was insubordination. It was career suicide. But it was speech. Commander Vance's voice came back sharp. Incredulous. Ellis, is that you? Affirmative, sir. Signal received, plain language. Urgency assessed high. A pause. Long enough for regret to bloom. Helm, alter course to 215. All escorts for Manta Submarine Screen Delta Ellis Lock onto that bearing and feed me updates. And for God's sake, encrypt. Next time, we found U-107 surfacing to recharge batteries, silhouetted against the phosphorescent wake. Depth charges rattled her hull. She crash-dived, but not before Blackwood's Aztec got a solid fix. 3 hours later, oil slicks and debris. No survivors from the U-boat, but Mazdam reached port with her cargo intact. Jan sent a short, coded thank you via FleetNet. I didn't respond. Didn't need to. No medal came for that night. No commendation. In fact, I received a quiet reprimand for operational indiscretion, filed in my service record with bureaucratic finality. But something shifted, not in the Admiralty's ledgers, but in me. The silence no longer felt like virtue, it felt like choice. And choice, however dangerous, carries its own dignity. By war's end, I had 37 convoy crossings logged, 2 commendations, and 1 unspoken truth I carried like ballast. They gave me a medal for silence-polished brass on crimson silk, but the thing I cherish, the only award worth having, is the memory of my own voice, however trembling, cutting through the static when it mattered most. The sea remembers every signal sent, and every one withheld, but only the speaker knows which weighs heavier in the soul.